Let's start with another session. And as we said in a previous class, today we are going to study about water pollution. So here we'll discuss about the causes and effects of water pollution and finally about the treatment of water. Let us start with a brief introduction. So we all know water is one of the most essential requirements for the survival of all the living organisms. We use water for the household activities, for agricultural, industrial purposes, and even for the recreational purposes. Let us talk about water pollution. Now, to define water pollution, it can be said in many ways. Water pollution is nothing but it is contamination of water bodies, say like the lakes, rivers, ocean, groundwater, etc. So water pollution not just actually start in water, it is as a result of the human activities on land. Water pollution usually occurs when the pollutants are directly or indirectly discharged into the water bodies without any adequate treatment. So let us see the next diagram. So in the sketch here, I have actually shown the causes of water pollution in brief. So as you see here, the untreated sewage from the industry or maybe from the household is directly discharged into the water, which finally causes water pollution and affects the aquatic organisms, including the plants and fishes or any other kind of aquatic organisms in water. Here, the animal waste is directly discharged into the water, which again causes water pollution. And then during the agricultural activities, as we have discussed in the previous sessions, we use a lot of pesticides and chemicals for the crop yield, right? So which finally reaches into the ocean or the nearby water bodies through runoff and causes water pollution here. And also, to define water pollution is actually where one or more substances are added into the water to an extent where it can be harmful for the humans or any kind of living organisms. So, as we already know, the water in oceans, lakes, or rivers actually have a natural tendency or natural ability to clean up the water to an extent. But when the pollutant or the pollutant which is discharged into the water exceeds a particular limit, the natural process of cleaning up becomes difficult, and thus end up polluting the water. And thus, to conclude from this, water pollution occurs when one or more substances are added into the water to such an extent where it may result or where it may become harmful for the animals or any kind of living organisms. Okay, so in the particular sketch here, I've again shown the causes or sources of water pollution here again. So here, as you see, the fertilizers contains phosphorus, nitrogen, and other harmful chemicals, which finally reaches the water bodies through runoff, and also the lead in the paint, other toxic materials, other toxic chemicals, the water soluble chemicals like lead also enters the water and finally acts as a pollutant in the water bodies, which indirectly or directly results in water pollution. Now, to talk about the sources of water pollution, there are natural sources of water pollutants, such as the mineral ores from the rocks and also the chemicals from the mines. But when we consider the sources which are arising due to the human activities alone, they can be broadly grouped into different categories, which includes domestic sewage, industrial effluents, surface runoff, and waste heat. Coming to domestic sewage, they usually include a liquid waste, which usually comes from the kitchen waste, and also the bathroom and the toilet wastewater. This wastewater, when it is directly discharged into the water bodies, including the rivers, lakes, etc., without any treatment, this automatically acts as pollutants. So, in the case of domestic effluents or the domestic sewages, including the human waste or the toilet waste, laundry waste, and also the kitchen waste, these contain all pathogens and inorganic nutrients, including nitrate and phosphate, which are very harmful for the humans as well as the aquatic organisms. And when talking about the laundry detergent waste, it usually consists of phosphate, which is harmful for organisms. Excess of any of those nutrients, when discharged into the water, it affects the quality of the water. Now, coming to the industrial effluents in most of the industrial operations, as we already know, the effluents are directly being discharged into the river or water bodies which is nearby. Now, about the industrial effluents, it is still hazardous compared to domestic sewage, because in the case of industrial effluents or industrial sewage, which comes directly or which is discharged directly into the water bodies from the industries, usually contain heavy metals, which includes mercury, cadmium, and even lead, which are deadly or which are very harmful for the aquatic organisms. And also, the industrial effluents includes the chemicals such as, say, for example, the phenols, dyes, paints, varnishes, and even the plastic waste used in the industries. These are all hazardous pollutants and which acts as major pollutants in water. And about the surface runoff, as we said in the previous slide, in most of the cultivated areas or the cultivated land, we know we use a lot of fertilizers, pesticides, and manures for the growth of crop, right? And these fertilizers, pesticides, and insecticides contain a lot of chemicals, which will be then washed away from the soil during a rain and which finally reaches the water bodies nearby. This automatically acts as pollutants in water. In many cases, we know water is used as a coolant, especially in the case of thermal power plants and also in refineries and few other industries. So here, the waste heat from these industries in the form of hot water is directly discharged into the nearby water bodies like rivers, lakes, whichever acts as a receiving water body. So when you dispose or when the hot water is directly discharged into the water body, it increases the temperature of the water body, which will directly affect the aquatic organisms. And also, this hot water, which is discharged from these industries into the water body, also causes like it affects the amount of dissolved oxygen content in the water bodies. Now, coming to the different types of water pollutants can be biological, chemical, or even physical. Now, talking about the biological water pollutants, it includes the pathogens such as virus, bacteria, worms, etc. And in the case of chemical pollutants, it may be either organic, inorganic, or it can be heavy metals, which usually comes from the industries. So, in the case of organic water pollutants, it includes the dyes and phenols, paint, plastic, etc. And in the case of inorganic water pollutant, it includes chloride, fluoride, nitrate, phosphate, which usually comes from the which usually comes in the form of runoff from the agricultural areas or even from the industries. Now, in the case of heavy metal, it includes mercury, lead, copper, zinc, and cadmium, and even other organic metallic compounds. So these are usually soluble heavy metals coming from the industries. Coming to the physical pollutants, it usually includes the waste heat from the thermal industries and other major industries. So that is about the major water pollutants.